Chance. That's fine.
Tyler and Jake.
All right, stream's good. We're live with the logo. Does the camera work? The camera is working.
She wasn't even out there, but she was like better than most of them. And like me and my friends out there, and she was just so awesome. I was like, so I went there and she like watched me go up there, and she watched me, and then I started singing, and she was like, okay, fine, this is a competition, it's karaoke, you know, like, and then she was singing, I love it. And I was like, fine, I'll sing Mariah Carey. I went up there and sang Mariah Carey. She left. Me and my friend, like, the whole time, she was just giving me this the whole time. And I was like, dude, it's karaoke. Get out of here. I was on Twitter. I was like, I literally, I was like, okay, this. He's so, like, poster calls. Sounds like we did probably never hear anymore, but I was like, oh. That made my night. I was like, I can just see it happening now. Was it? Yeah. How long do you think it'll be? It was so good. I was like, I'm never gonna fight her. I'm about to fight her, and I was like,
So you gotta make that.
oh, that's
What else?
This is
All right.
They're going.
Still on the hip-hop project. I was a unicorn socks. Those are nice tags, just crazy shoes. Thank you.
yeah.
You're still on your hip-hop project?
Yeah.
Still got that
Sometimes
one?
Not very slow. It's all my fault. Yeah. It's just actually
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I just like, I'll think about it, I'll be like, but the times I think about it, it's impossible to be like, you know, I'm really sorry. It's impossible again.
Does it go up?
Phone on silent?
Sorry, waiting for my name.
Phone on silent?
Phone one?
Is your phone on silent?
Yeah.
So we just recording
Oh.
videos, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some of it, because our pod, like, wouldn't, it was like not, I don't know, we plugged everything in, it wasn't lighting up, or couldn't record anything in our pod. Yeah, so we wasted like the first hour, well, we went into the mini studio and just did our production, but we might have to redo it, honestly. It sounds crappy, we got like one bass and one guitar and yeah, so that was my Trevor was awesome and it was cool.
Yeah. It is, I mean, it's the world's living. You gotta get rid of it. It's the world's we live in.
Hey, listen, turn your electronics off and no stuff while you're listening to this. No phones, no stuff. Well, as you know, being musicians, a lot of them, their concept of time as a, you know, they're going to be sorry. I know you guys probably want to start on time because of the podcast, right?
Well, we'll go whenever you're ready.
Come on in, Lex.
I don't mind being interrupted for questions either, you know, it's not,
Great. Yeah,
I'm
just
not
set
here
the
doing a
format.
speech, I'm here just talking to you.
Just set the format as you
Nathan. So they can get more information.
There we go, we got 4 people tuned in. So yeah, we got 4 people standing by. Well, if I click on it, it goes live. The audio's already live.
Playing.
Scott's got to introduce you.
Okay.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Scott.
it very much. So, as you guys all know, my name is Scott Keaton. I'm one of the lecturers here, full-time lecturers at ACM at UCO. And we were very lucky in that our own Mitchell Coe, or one of our students, was able to land an internship at the Halsey group, right?
Yes.
Yes. And with the man who I've been a fan of for a very long time. I'm kind of strange. While I was playing music, after about the first 2 or 3 years of being really broke, I started to get really interested in business and the managers and who was around and those kinds of things that we talk about every day here. So we're very lucky to have Mr. Jim Halsey, who, good grief, I mean, I'll let you, how long have you been doing this gig? The management?
65 years.
65 years. So I'm pretty sure he knows what he's talking about. Some of the largest and biggest names in country music, still today some of the most innovative things. He started the music business program, correct, at OCU?
Yes.
And also has the Halsey Institute online, which we're lucky enough here to be a part of. So there's a lot of resources, a lot of theirs. Also has a wonderful book called Starmaker, right?
Yes.
I've read it. Yeah, there it is right there. Unfortunately, I would have you sign it, but unfortunately mine's on my Kindle. So kind of mess up the screen. So anyway, you guys can give a big hand for our friend, Mr. Jim Halsey.
Well, thank you, Scott Keaton, for inviting me, and my intern, Mitchell Coe, who's here and works with us part of the time in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're officers. For those of you that are watching this streaming, ACM at UCO, this is Academy of Contemporary Music at the University of Central Oklahoma, and it's in Oklahoma City. And the campus is located downtown Oklahoma City in Bricktown. And so Scott Booker, the innovator and the creator of this whole process, has been a friend of mine for a long time, and he is the head man here at the school, and he's also the manager of Flaming Lips, which is, I think, he and his creative management, along with the group, are one of the most innovative and out-of-the-box type of management things that are happening or that have been happening. So yes, I've been an artist manager all my life, or not yet anyway, but I'm still working on it. And one group that I want to talk about, which is a perfect example of how artist management can work when all of the elements are in place, is a group that I've managed for 42 years, the Oak Ridge Boys. Now, a lot of people know the Oak Ridge Boys primarily for their country, pop, rock, and even going back to their gospel music. They still today, this year, 2016, they're working 150 concerts. Now, beyond the 150 concerts, they still do interviews, they do television. They're on the Grand Ole Opry 6 to 8 times during the year. Those aren't counted in the 150 days. They do a lot of festivals, and we do touring, big time touring. These are all major events and venues that they play, but it always wasn't that way. And this is what intrigues me about being an artist manager, particularly if you have an artist group relationship that believes in what you're doing and you believe in what they're doing. This can be pure magic. And that's the type of artist that you want to work So I'm going to talk today about the anatomy of the artist manager and what makes up this wonderful world of creativity within the artist manager's business. Now, those of you in the class today are taking the music business class, and I understand this is specific to artist management today. Well, when I started, when I was going to college, I did a little bit of everything too. That's the way I learned. But I became a promoter, and you know, you have to learn who the team members are, and that's, I'm sure, what you're learning here at ACM. Is the fact that this is not a one-person show or even a one-act show. It's all about assembling the right team and having that team work together in harmony to work for your success. And if everybody's doing their job and doing it right, success is going to come. So a lot of the artists that I've been involved with over the years, and I've been involved with really great artists, everybody from the Judds to Lee Greenwood to Hank Thompson to Merle Haggard, who recently just passed, one of the great artists. But over my years, I've worked with over 100 different artists in the capacity of either agent or manager. A few of them I worked as manager. And the Oak Ridge Boys were one, and they're a perfect example, and I can tell you how the analogy of how you can take an artist from the beginning, if that artist believes in you and you believe in each other, how you can work for success and become successful. Now, to be a good artist manager, first of all, you have to have good eyes and good ears, and you have to have that special ability, which I thank God that I have been given, is to recognize somebody that's good, but beyond that, somebody that's great. There are a lot of really good artists out there today. They're good songwriters, they're good performers, they're good artists. But the ones that are going to be really important in your life and in the life of the entertainment business are the ones that are great. And you can develop and train yourself to recognize that special something that an artist has when they get on stage. Maybe it's a glitch in their voice, maybe it's a twinkle in the eye, or a certain movement that they make, or a twist of the knee, or a spin of the body, or something that is just sets them aside from everybody else that's out there performing and on stage. And maybe it's that special intonation of their voice, or their ability to write that particular song that sets them apart. So what you as prospective artist managers are looking for is somebody that has that little niche of being different. Now, if you can do that, then you're on your way to becoming a good artist manager. I'll talk about the Oak Ridge Boys because they are a perfect example of working within the box, but also thinking outside of the box. 43 years ago, I went to a showcasing of Columbia record artists in Nashville, Tennessee. I'd actually gone to see somebody else, but I heard that this young gospel group, the Oak Ridge Boys, were going to be on there. Now, I wasn't in the gospel business. I was in the country music business. But I decided that I would stay and see them. I'd already seen everybody, and they were almost like the last group on the show. But I'd heard about the Oak Ridge Boys. Somebody told me, said, you ought to see the Oak Ridge Boys because they've really got that something special. Well, that intrigued me to where I wanted to see them. Now, how special can they be? Well, if they are, I want to see them. They came on. Here were these 4 good-looking young guys dressed so stylishly. Already I was impressed. They came on the stage. They moved on there with great excitement and interest. And believe me, at this time, not many people knew who the Oak Ridge Boys were outside of gospel music. They came on, and their singing and their intonation, their harmonies, their presence on stage, their ability to connect with the audience, that was that magic time. I mean, that's when the chills go up and down your back, and you know that that's somebody special. I went backstage to congratulate them on the performance, which was strictly gospel music. And I said, you guys have got that something special. You Oak Ridge boys, the four of you, have got that camaraderie that you can project to the audience out there, and that audience gets it. Even though this was mainly a country music audience you were playing to, they got your music. And I said, I think there's a big future for you. And if you'd ever consider expanding your repertoire to go beyond strictly gospel music, I would be interested in being your manager. Well, they listened to it, and they kind of nodded to each other and said they would get back to me. And about 3 weeks later, they called and wanted to have a meeting with me. So that was the beginning of our relationship. 43 years ago, was at the beginning of 1974. The thing that with any artist that I've ever represented, whether we were their agency or we were their manager, is I always listen to that artist and find out where they wanted to go. It's not coming in and slapping them on the back and say, hey babe, we can do this, we can take you here, we're going to put you on Broadway, whatever. The idea is you want to work with that artist and you want to find out where they want to go. And then it's up to you as an artist management to the company to try to find the pathway to take the artist so they achieve their dreams and goals. Their goal was to have more people hear their music and hear their performance. It wasn't to make a lot of money. It wasn't anything other than they had an art. They presented their art on stage, and they wanted people to see it and appreciate it. And I said, well, what about expanding your repertoire so at least you have some more country type songs in your repertoire, or even a pop rock type of song, which they certainly were capable of doing. They said they would learn some songs that they couldn't change immediately. And the one thing that I didn't realize at that time was the insistence of their strictly gospel audience to play only gospel music. And if they changed one song even to a contemporary type of song, they lost their audience. We stood that as a chance, and we did lose a lot of audience when we first changed, but they all played. The thing that we do, still do to this day, when we finished our meeting up and decided to take that step and go beyond where they were with their audience and try to build a larger audience to appreciate their art and their music, they realized that they would probably lose some of their audience. But we had to build a new audience. And at that time, and still today, the country music audience was vastly larger and worldwide. We gathered at the conclusion of that meeting in our circle, which we still do to this day. We held hands and we said our prayers together. And our prayers being for being the best that we could possibly be. And people understand what our mission is, that we want them to be in a better place by hearing our music. You know, that's what we're all about. If you're an artist manager and you're representing artists or bands or musicians, you have the ability to change people's lives when they come to your concert. That's what I'm about, and I have been my whole 65 years in this business. And putting on concerts, events, shows, television, is how can we make people's lives better? That was our goal with the Oak Ridge Boys. How can we make people's lives better with our performance and our music? Well, reach more people, that's how you do it. Well, they had made a commitment to me and to the business, and I had a real obligation. Then, because I not only had these 4 guys, I had their families, their bands, their crew, and everybody else that was now depending upon me to put them out in venues to where they could be seen and heard and have a reasonable expectation of income that comes in so they can pay themselves and all their family. We had nothing on the books when we started. So where do we start with? Nobody in my business, in the country music business, had heard of the Oak Ridge Boys. They knew they were a gospel group, but they'd never seen them perform, and it was still a new entity to country music. I was very fortunate. I was producing shows in Las Vegas at that time for the Howard Hughes hotels. And he had 6 hotels in which we put most of the entertainment in those hotels. This was 1974. And I had one continuous show that I had running at the Landmark Hotel, which was one of the hotels that he had. I had a 500-seat theater in it. They served dinner, and we put on a show called Country Music USA. And we changed the performers about every 3 weeks. We'd have Hank Thompson, we'd have Leroy Van Dyke, we had Roy Clark, we had Jody Miller, Ferlin Husky, people of that stature, Freddie Fender that would go in there. So I visited with Mr. Walter Kane. He was the man that Howard Hughes sent to Las Vegas to run his enterprise there. And I was explaining to him about the Oak Ridge Boys and what a sensational show, and I wanted to put them in to headline 3 weeks at the Landmark Hotel. And Walter Kane said, well, nobody's ever heard of the Oak Ridge Boys here in Las Vegas. And I said, I know, but this is an act that we can build on and build an audience here to where you can play them a number of times and will sustain themselves with building their audience. He said, well, I'm going to give you a shot at it. I too don't know how it will work. And I said, I want to explain to you, Mr. Kane, that part of the repertoire will be gospel or Christian music. And he said back a little offended, and he said, we know we have Christians here in Las Vegas too, and which they did. But the first time that we went in, now the show was going to be pretty full anyway, because the show had a reputation, Country Music USA. And it was a variety show. We had a comedian, an instrumentalist, and girl singers. So one of the tricks that you do in any type of is to make people understand that who you have is going to be really important. And you can't do that by putting little bitty type and saying introducing the Oak Ridge Boys. We started with the Oak Ridge Boys at the Landmark Hotel. Nobody had ever heard of it in Las Vegas, but we had 8-foot-high letters that said Oak Ridge Boys. So people driving by would say, wow, the Oak Ridge Boys. And say, who's that? I don't know, but they must be good. Look at the sign. We went in there, and they did have enough change in their repertoire that it was some country, some pop, rock, and of course some standard gospel songs that everybody knew. It turned out the 3 weeks that we were there, we were tremendous success. And I knew that this would be our beginning, our time to really put our foot out, and we're going. Now, that 3 weeks produced a lot of different things for us. First of all, it gave us an introduction to an almost entirely different audience. And we knew that it was going to work. If it worked with that Las Vegas audience, we could take it anyplace else. Remember, this 42 years ago, everybody thinks of the Oak Ridge Boys, Elvira and Bobby Sue and the big stars. Well, they didn't have that at that time. Didn't have records. One of the things that we did was to bring in people from Los Angeles. It was only an hour's flight, and I had an office in Los Angeles, and I would bring television producers in during that 3 weeks. I would bring buyers in. I would bring other casino buyers in. I brought in fair managers from all around the country in that 3 weeks. We would fly them in at our own expense and put them up at the hotel and say, we want to show you this act for your fair next summer or for another casino someplace. It gave us that showcase that we could show to the other members of the entertainment business. But one of the most important things that it did it gave us a salary for 3 weeks of money that the guys could pay themselves, their band, their crew, make their payments on their homes. And the bus was not running for 3 weeks. The bus was idle because we didn't have expenses with that. We were in one place. And we had all the hotel rooms that were complimentary to the hotel, and all the food. So we had 3 weeks with virtually no expense at all. That first 3 weeks that we were in business with the Oak Ridge Boys, we showcased maybe to 25 to 50 important buyers of festivals and other events and package shows that came in and saw what we were talking about. Well, that was only the beginning and the start of what we did. Now we had to really put them out around the country, in Wichita and Denver and Cleveland and Dallas, Texas and Phoenix, Arizona. And they weren't, at that time, known enough to where we could book them individually. So I had the other artists that we represent at that time. I went to each one of them and I said, we're introducing this new act, the Oak Ridge Boys, to the country music audience, and we need to open for you. Will you hire them and pay them to open your show? Well, that was Roy Clark, Hank Thompson, Mel Tillis, Tammy Wynette, that all used them to open for their shows. So we had maybe another 12 to 16, 20 weeks that were booked up ahead of us that we didn't have to worry about them having to draw people to pay money. Now remember, this is all in the beginning. It's like a beginning act, except they were the established act in gospel music, and they were changing their repertoire now to country music. So a lot of the gospel audience didn't like that and abandoned them. So we went the hard way and took it on our own to step out and do it. Well, fortunately, because they are so great and dynamic, we were able to make that change. We still didn't have records, but they just recorded a backup with Paul Simon on Slip Sliding Away. And Paul Simon received a Grammy for that. So all of a sudden we're getting some recognition outside of gospel music with other people. Johnny Cash took them under his wing, and they were just finishing up their gospel sessions and discussing with Johnny Cash what they should do, what way they could go to reach more people, to help more people, to change lives. And Johnny Cash gave him a big blessing and a big support, and he had them open his show as guest artists in Las Vegas. So when you're starting with your act, and it could be an act that you have that you're going right here in school, it might be somebody that you believe in here that's really good. You have to try every means and every method that you can to get them in front of an audience. Be seen and be heard by someone. And it's great if you can be seen and be heard by someone that can do something for you. Put you on another show, put you on television, offer you a record deal. So being an artist manager is like giving birth to a new child there, and you have to nurture it and build it and teach it, and pretty soon you put it on a bicycle, and pretty soon it's going to high school, and pretty soon it's in college and graduated, and you're out and you're touring. But an artist manager is the one that designs the plan. Now, part of the plan for those of you that are in this business, and I'm sure this is maybe old news, but it never hurts to reiterate something or to emphasize that it's about a team and the teamwork that you get. And being an artist manager, you're just one part of that team. And it's all focused around the artist. That's the center of the hub, is the artist and their artistic ability and their talent. But now you have to start, as an artist manager, putting the team together. And it's everybody that's involved. And pretty soon, if you become a big artist, you have a lot of team members. Besides building the team within your own company yourself, your tour manager, your merchandising manager, your marketing person, your creative people within your own company that you do your own team. And we've got that at the Oak Ridge Boys. We have a great internal team. But we also, you start building with agents, record company, publicists, which we have, I think, the best publicist in the business. His name is Kurt Webster, and he's in Nashville, and he handles a lot of important people from Dolly Parton, Kid Rock, Kenny Rogers, the Oak Ridge Boys, of course. But it's his creativity that when those of us on the team meet and we discuss and lay out our plans, that his thoughts and ideas and creativeness is as important as the Oak Ridge Boys being on stage with their great performance. The booking agents, that's creative too. And being a booking agent is like being the salesperson. Your main responsibility as a booking agent is to create revenue. And mainly, a booking agent will handle a lot of different acts. Or if you're with a big company like William Morris or Creative Artists Agency or that, you may have thousands of acts that are not only musical acts, but speakers, lecturers, football players, athletes, the whole thing. So you have a job that's cut out for you to know your artist. The promoter is a part of that team. And we have an online class now called the Fast Track to the Music Business at Halsey Institute. And you can go to Halsey Institute and see what we do, but we explain the various functions of all of the major entities in your life, your team members. And we've interviewed 60 of the top people in the music and entertainment business that give their own specific lecture. Doc McGee, who manages Motley Crue and Kiss and that, with Kurt Webster and Jeremy Westby with the Webster PR company, talk about what the PR people do with you. Record company executives talk about their function. All of these things together, if you can imagine a wagon wheel with spokes coming out from it, they all center in on the artist. And each one of those team members have a specific job that they do as part of the team in supporting the artist. The team members can go beyond that even. First of all, then when you start really doing some business, you're going to need a legal team. And you're going to have lawyers and attorneys that specialize in the music and entertainment business, because it is a different business with different nuances to each and everything that you're doing. It's not like real estate or life insurance or building contracts or selling anything else. You're involved with people's lives on a personal basis because they're an artist and you're looking after their artistic talents, and they each have a special requirement. Each artist has their own special requirements. So you have to have a good legal team involved with that. The promoter is the person that usually you're involved with once during a year, or maybe if you have a promoter that promotes a number of venues, but their interest is only in their venue or their special date that they're doing, and to concentrate every ounce of their effort in making that a success. Now, your overall career and your record career and your TV career and all of that, while they will use that to their advantage in some way, they're not out there building that. They're building their own venue, selling tickets. But that promoter is the one that's going to put you on stage and pay you a fee to get on stage and perform. And if you do a good job and you sell tickets, you're going to get paid for it. So the promoter is another important part of the team. And we explain all of this in the Halsey Institute. We have a fast track course, which is a series of actually 27 mini courses that are within that you can take, and explains, and I have the best in the business that talk about what they do. I would suggest that all of you, in addition to what you're taking here at the Academy of Contemporary Music at the UCO, that this would be a course that you could look at and supplement what you're doing and learn a lot faster all of the elements that go in there. Part of that I talk about in my lecture today or talk that I have with you. And anytime any of you have a question, I'm just talking to you. I don't have a made-up speech here, so just ask me a question. You have a question or just scratching your head? Okay. But the team is what you learn, and that's the essential part. Now, within the Oak Ridge Boys, we have our essential team within the Oak Ridge Boys company itself. It's Derek Kinslow, it's John Meir, it's Kathy Harris, who's the marketing director, and all of the elements. Karen Worf, who's in the accounting, and Carrie, who handles all the phones and makes appointments for us. Those are above and beyond the 4 Oak Ridge Boys themselves: Dwayne Allen, Joe Bonzo, William Lee Golden, and Richard Sturban. They're our key. They're the hub of our wheel that everybody works around and works off of. So it's our job and our business to take care of them. Then there's the band, and there's the road crew. And there are the elements that when we reach the different communities that we play at, that you go on stage and all of a sudden you have the local stage crew, the local promoter, the local caterer, the hotels. So you can see that just one group is responsible for the livelihood of hundreds, maybe even thousands of people during the course of a year. But when the 4 Oak Ridge Boys get on stage, the spotlight shines on them. And that's what you feel out there in the audience. And that you feel that magic that comes from their performance and their music that makes you feel and puts you in a better place than maybe you were when you came in there before. That's every performer's obligation, is to make or to bring your audience to a better place than when they came in that night. I learned this very early on as a promoter of shows before I became a manager. I promoted a lot of shows, primarily with Hank Thompson, back at that time, a very big country music band. And I could see during that course of time that Hank was performing on stage that people that came in, maybe they were having problems or trouble or family or not enough money to meet the mortgage or to buy the kids shoes or something. But for 2 hours, they are transformed to a different place of harmony within themselves that they weren't able to get to by themselves. And they could call themselves back to that even a month later. They could remember back at that concert. I've had people tell me that, write me letters. The same is true with Roy Clark that I discovered and managed, and still manage today. Discovered Roy in 1959, and we're still working together. The people's lives can be changed for the good by a good concert or good wholesome performance by the right type of performer. And that's all we represented at the Halsey Company, were the right type of performers that got out and gave themselves and their soul and their body and their heart to that audience out there to try to make them and bring them to a better place, make them feel better. Well, I like to use the Oak Ridge Boys as an example of artist management, artist relationship. Because, first of all, it's lasted so long, and we believe in each other. And the Oak Ridge Boys would say, whatever you do, we'll back you on doing it. They believed in most everything that we've talked about and have done together. There may have been some things that we didn't, but we still did them and they worked. And the idea is to build your artist's reputation and their name and their image so they will have a value that lasts. And how do you do that? Well, it takes possibly planning, thinking, and working and doing, not only in the box, but outside of the box. And if you can do that, it creates a little interest and creates some attention within the audience out there, you're on your way to having somebody that's going to become a viable artist, a viable name, a big name. I wanted to comment on something I commented earlier. I meant to say it then. And I've represented over 100 artists during my career time. And each time that I've ever signed an artist to our company, and particularly in the artist management area, I would say, where do you want to go? And what do you want to do with your life? And universally, they said, I want people to understand my art or to hear my music. I want people to like my music. With all of those people that I have represented, I have never had one say, I want to make a lot of money. It's always about the art, and it's about the heart and soul of the artists themselves. And you probably recognize that yourself in dealing with artists, and most of you in here are probably artists of one kind or another anyway, and know that that's really what you want. You want recognition for your art. You want the ability to do good and to help people with your art. In a way, it's kind of like a preacher, except you've got something that you're different out there with, but because you're satisfying a hunger for peace and harmony that maybe comes with music rather than words. So you have a great obligation to do that. And I've never done anything I've done for money. Now, the odd part about all this, if you become successful, you're going to make a lot of money. And that's nothing wrong with that. I'm for that. And I've been blessed to be successful myself. And thank you, God. Yes. But it's not about that. It's about reaching people. So, with any artist, after you've had your meeting, after you found out where that artist wants to go and what they want to do with their life, you have to design a plan. In essence, you become the architect for that artist's career. You're the one, and I've always done it in writing. Every artist I've ever represented, I put it in writing and put the goals in writing, what we want to do, play the venues, what kind of venues, the press and PR, and how important is that, and who do you get to handle your press and PR, your records, what about your music, who has heard your music, who do you want to hear your music, how about a record deal and a record contract. Then you build, where do you want to play with your music, where do you want to be a year from now, where do you want to be 2 years from now. You write all that down. I used to write everything down in a 5-year plan, but not anymore, because time seems to work faster. And with social media and internet services and web pages and the way to disseminate your art and your music through social media, it's faster. It happens faster. The burnout is faster too. But now I make a 2-year plan. Where do you want to be 6 months from now? Where do you want to be a year from now? Where do you want to be 2 years from now? Then you set certain guideposts that help you get there. You write everything down. You put it in writing, and you write it down. We did this with the Oak Ridge Boys, and we did a series of 5-year plans. With the Oak Ridge Boys, we wanted to play the best venues possible to play. We wanted to open up Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Strip, for country music at that time. It had very little country music on the Las Vegas Strip. We wanted to develop our international acceptance. We did that with playing various festivals in London, the Scandinavian countries, the Benelux countries. We wanted to play the best venues to get on the best shows. We wanted television. All of this was written down. Television. What television? Well, of course, The Tonight Show. Well, The Tonight Show, our company was the only company in country music that booked anybody on national television. And I'm talking about shows like The Tonight Show and Joey Bishop and Dean Martin Show and Ed Sullivan shows, and nobody else we can say unequivocally that did that. but us. So that was an important thing for the Oak Ridge Boys, was to get on the Tonight Show. Because at that time, it's different now because there's so many channels and things that you can see, but at that time there weren't that many channels. So you did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. That's 20 million people that saw you. 20 million people that see you in one night is a great impact if they start buying records or buying tickets to come see you. So as we did that and we started, Johnny didn't know who the Oak Ridge Boys were, but because of our reputation of only putting good acts on with him, they bought a chance with the Tonight Show. And eventually, they became favorites of Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show. And I forget how many shows that they did, maybe 30 or 40 or 50 Tonight Shows. And each time, those people that would respond the next day, we would get phone calls to book dates, to special events. So the venues are important, the itinerary is important, television is important. Certain venues are more important than others, like Las Vegas was, like Carnegie Hall. If you play Carnegie Hall, you know you're good enough to play anywhere in the world. So each one of those became a special event. We were starting to do a lot of business in New York, and we created an event out of an event. The event was we booked them at Radio City Music Hall. And I was just starting and just discovered two young ladies that were singers, a mother and daughter team called the Judds. So we did the Judds routine, very similar to that we did with the Oak Ridge Boys. We put the Judds on the beginning of a lot of the artists' shows that we played, so they would be introduced to the audience. So we put the Judds on the front of the Oak Ridge Boys Radio City Music Hall. Now that's one of the grandest, most prestigious music halls in the world, Radio City. It had to be a special event because part of what we did as a company was to create these events. Not just make it, well, we booked the date and they go in and play them and they leave. So we worked almost a year on this to do it. I commissioned Al Hirschfield, who was a caricaturist, to do the caricature of the four Oak Ridge Boys. So we could use that as the center of the poster. And I had all these giant, they're called 3-sheets, that were going to post all over New York City. And I had 2,000 of them printed. That my idea was that when anybody came into New York City, that you would see the Oak Ridge Boys poster on a billboard or on a fence of some kind like that. So we additionally worked with Sam Goody, which it was a group of music stores. He had 27 of them in New York City, Manhattan proper. And we had a new record release that we were going to have at that time. We got the 27 stores to feature the Oak Ridge Boys in their store window in Manhattan there, with millions of people that would see it walking by every day. And that was going to be a big part of the event. So in making any event, you want to layer, and it's part of my philosophy of layered marketing. Doing one thing is important, doing two things is important. But if you can do three things and they all tie in together, all of a sudden 1, 2, and 3 add up more than 3, it might be 10 or 20. If you get 10 different things going on, there's no telling what expanse that would be. So we got all of the Sam Goody record stores. We got all of the television market live shows that the guys were doing. And we had a great promotion. And one of the things that was important to us was not just playing Radio City, because even selling out, we weren't going to make a lot of money. But it was to expose my group, the Oak Ridge Boys, to New York advertising agencies. So our company, Radio City Music Hall, is across the street from the Time Life building. And at the top of the Time Life building was a private club, so to speak. We secured that club and we invited 500 guests to come to the reception before the Oak Ridge Boys concert. And this was Lee Iacocca, who was head of Chrysler Motors at that time, the head of NBC, the head of all the big advertising agencies, the different companies that were responsible for spending money on radio and television and newspaper print. That we had 500 very important invited guests that came to our reception before the concert. And they were going to meet the Oak Ridge Boys and they were going to meet the Judds. Well, we did all of that, and my thinking was, flash a little horror there in the beginning. We've got 500 seats carved out in the very center of the theater of Radio City Music Hall. What if after those important guests meet them at this reception up there and say, well, let's go home or let's go eat someplace or that. So I wanted to make sure that they all came to the show and sat in their seats because I wanted them to see the show, but I didn't want to have 500 empty seats right in front of the stage. So I hired New York policemen, or at least they were in uniform, and when the reception was over and the show was about to start, and they all came down, I had police on that blocked the street on either side to where they almost had to walk down the center and go into the theater, which they did. I don't think we lost a person. And from that, we were able to secure other important advertising and commercial endorsements that still to this day people remember that specific concert. But I had another little fright too, because the one thing, Radio City seats 5,500 people, so we played there 2 nights, so we did 11,000 people. But in a city like New York, you're talking about millions of people. I wanted millions of people to know about the Oak Ridge Boys. And I flew into town about 2 weeks before the concert, and I was expecting to see our big giant posters up everywhere on signboards and on fence boards and everything. I didn't see one of them. And I go to the office of Radio City, and here are the posters still on the desk there. Hadn't even been unwrapped. Well, I kind of came unglued a little bit, and I said, well, what's the deal here? These posters are supposed to be out all over the city where people can see them. And the management of Radio City said, well, we don't need to go to that expense. He said, we're going to be sold out. There's no point in spending another few $1,000s just to put your posters out. Well, that wasn't my point. My point was I wanted everybody in New York to see those great posters. So our company had to pay for putting those posters out, even though the show was virtually sold out and eventually was. The posters didn't mean anything as far as selling tickets. We had already sold the tickets. But I wanted those millions of people to see them as they came driving the streets. So you have more motives sometimes than just the straight ahead thing. You put the poster out to sell the tickets. The motive in that case was I wanted the millions of people, and maybe that would stimulate them to maybe go buy a record or something. Well, that was an event. And what we do within our company, we would create events. And events became more important than the actual play date itself, because you not only lived a lot before the event, you lived during the event, and then you lived for months after the event. We became, the company did, our Halsey company, became important of creating events. And sometime I'll come back and pinpoint about 10 of the biggest events that we ever did that people still talk about today that were mind-blowing then and still now. Our company, with the help of artists like the Oak Ridge Boys, was more interested in promoting the artist than any agency that I know of that was just solely interested in booking the date and issuing a contract and collecting their commission. Because if you have your heart and soul tied in with the artists themselves, it's not about the money. It's how can you make that artist grow? How can they become bigger than life? And part of that goes back with artists like the Oak Ridge Boys that would believe in what you're doing, and maybe they would know they were not going to make any money at it, but they recognized the value of the importance of the event. One of those great events happened 40 years ago this year. And it took 2 years to put together. But that was the first ever country music show to perform in the Soviet Union. That was in 1976. That was with Roy Clark. Roy Clark got the invitation after almost 2 years of trying to get it and work the details out. And we knew at that time we were still building the Oak Ridge Boys because we had a record deal, but we didn't have a hit record. But we had the possibility of going and making that next step. You look at all the things when you work with an artist as different steps. You take baby steps, you take medium-sized steps, then you start taking giant steps. We needed to take a few more steps with the Oak Ridge Boys to get where we wanted to be. This is 40 years ago. Roy invited, through our consultation, of course, the Oak Ridge Boys to appear with him in the Soviet Union. We were going to do 21 concerts there at the very beginning of 1976. That was back when a time when the diplomatic relations were very difficult. The Soviets thought we were going to bomb them anytime. We thought the Soviets were going to bomb us. And there was, the actual tour was delayed several times because of certain diplomatic things that would have happened, and they'd say, we'll cancel the tour. We were able to get it back on, and we went in January of 1976. Roy Clark and the Oak Ridge Boys setting monumental stones in the path of success there, and for success for country music, but more importantly for America itself. Because there have been a number of artists, not country music artists, but a number of artists that had gone to the Soviet Union for jazz artists, classical artists, choirs, and things of that kind. But they never did mix with the people in any way. They were kept sequestered either in the hotel, they didn't meet anybody. But with Roy and the Oak Ridge Boys, they met everybody. They were walking the streets. For some reason or another, the Soviet government felt comfortable with country music artists walking the streets and visiting with people. So at the end of that time, we had a full page in Pravda, which was the Soviet newspaper that spread their word. The full page in it that said the Oak Ridge Boys and Roy Clark did more diplomatic good than anything that had been done diplomatically in the last several years. So we felt very proud of that. But this is what the Oak Ridge Boys are about. And then we came back to the States and we started working within our plans to get on the best shows, to do the TV, and to get that magical record. And that magical record came at the end of 1981 with Elvira. We'd had a few hits up on Y'all Come Back Saloon in 1977 was a big hit, but not that giant hit, that big, eventually a 3 million seller, Elvira. That was what turned the corner to where we started playing a different type of venue. We started playing arenas, and we went out with a package with Kenny Rogers and Dottie West and the Oak Ridge Boys, and did the first arena show that country music had ever done. I always liked to be first at doing anything. We were first to go to the Soviet Union, first to do a lot of things. Somebody may come along and always do it better, but nobody can ever say they did it first. We did it first. So then from the Elvira, we realized that the television was an important part of reaching the audience, that we could only reach so many each night as we do our personal appearances. And we did a number of television shows. We did an HBO television show, which is a highly rated show. This is in the 1980s. We did all of the regular network shows that were available at that time that were using variety acts. At that time, they still didn't use any country music acts. You kept maybe Roy Clark and Tammy Wynette, and we got the Judds on. But the Oak Ridge Boys probably did more TV than anybody else. They and Roy Clark. That's what built them. And when you get your artist built to a certain level, you have to keep reinventing yourself every year. You have to do something a little different, a little special from what you did last year. Because if it's the same old thing every year, pretty soon your audience will say, well, we saw that last year. What's going to be different about it this year? So we had a number, almost every year, of reinventions of what we would do and how we would do it. We would name our tours, and we would have specific titles and events for the tours. We got involved with, actually in Oklahoma City, a charity here called Feed the Children. And we did 12 years of work for Feed the Children, and we did 10 to 12 television specials for Feed the Children. We did at least one a year for them. And that television special was one of the highest rated shows that Feed the Children ever ran. So those things come along because you try to invent them, you try to work something up. Most of the things that you have done as an artist, people will think, well, that company or that television show called up and asked for the artist. It comes because the artist and the manager and the agency and the press and the PR company work together in trying to maintain their image and their availability. So when they're on a television show, somebody just didn't say, well, they called up. They knew that the Oak Ridge Boys were available because our press and PR person said in their, yes, here the Oak Ridge Boys are going to be available during this certain week. And let's try to work out a date to come in. So we go back to the old team again. It's all that team working together. And if the team works together, it's a magical event. Corporate sponsor is another thing too. And we've had a number of corporate sponsors since we've been. So all of these elements come together as part of your overall plan, as part of what you've laid out here in your scope of things, year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you reinvent your next plan for the next 5 years. We're doing it on the 2-year basis now with the Oak Ridge Boys because time just goes faster and elements happen faster. We've developed now a cruise where the last 3 years we've done is been a country music cruise, and we're getting ready to do another one in January of 2017. This will have a number of artists on it, including Vince Gill and Tanya Tucker and Larry Gatlins and the Oak Ridge Boys, but they're very, very successful. But it gives us something different that we talk about. It's not just playing the same venue with the same promoter and selling the tickets. It's something that we do that is over and above and beyond our normal everyday life. And we do that every day with something, and part of that is developing your relationship with your whole team. It's not one person that thinks about this, or it's not one person that puts it together. It's the management team. It's the Oak Ridge Boys internal team. It's the booking agency, which happens to be William Morris, the gentleman by the name of Barry Jeffrey is our responsible agent there. It's the press and PR team. It's the Kurt Webster of the world with Jeremy Westby, Scott Adkins, that whole team that we work together and make it successful. So I don't know of any artist or any person or any agency or any manager that's ever done it alone. It's always been with a lot of help and a lot of people that come together and do it. So part of what I'm talking about today can be summed up in maybe 3 or 4 sentences here. Number one, it's the team. The team is the most important thing that you've got going for you. It's your vision and your ability that you can develop to recognize and spot talent. It's designing a plan. You just can't go out there and shoot a gun off someplace and expect that it's going to pick up here or there. You have to plan. You have to aim that gun, and it has to be aimed carefully with what you want to hit in the future. It's about events and developing and creating events. Part of it is about who you know, and that's why you go places. That's why you do events. That's why you go to conventions, and so you can meet people, and so they will know you and remember you. I used to have, I still do, but I have a little system that I used to begin with. When I was doing Las Vegas, I used it as kind of like a recognition of backstage pass. But I used to put a red rose on everybody. Just come up and put a rose on. Well, number one, that transfers a certain energy between each other. When you put the rose on, you never give it to them and let them do it. You put the rose on. That puts some good positive energy on the person you put it on. Number one, they'll remember who you are. And number two, they'll remember who you represent and what you were doing. So I took that rose to the Soviet Union because we didn't speak the language. We put this rose as a rose of friendship, we explained it. And we put it on. I put it on the Minister of Culture and we'll see a theater in Moscow during the Oak Ridge Boys Roy Clark concert. And about halfway through the show, there was an emissary that came back from the Minister of Culture and said, Mr. Halsey, the Minister of Culture, would like 12 more roses. So I gave them to him. We did that to Johnny Carson's show. We did it in Las Vegas. And we did it everywhere at all the events that we did. My wife and I one time were in the Oyster Bar in the Plaza Hotel in New York. And I saw this guy across the way. He kept looking at me. Pretty soon he came over. He said, I see the red rose on your lapel. I said, do you know Jim Halsey? And I said, I am Jim Halsey. He said, well, I'm Gil Cates. I'm Joe Cates' brother. Joe Cates was the biggest producer of television specials at that time in America. And Gil Cates he taught at UCLA and he produced the Oscars every year. So the rose is a symbol of friendship, but it's a remembrance that you've put on somebody with that energy that you put on somebody. So how do you get in this business? Well, maybe some of you are already in it. And I'm going to end up here. First of all, I want to thank Scott Keaton for inviting me here to the class. Mitchell Coe for my intern in Tulsa for suggesting it and making it available. And Scott Booker, who's the boss here, who did my class at OCU at one time and also in Tulsa. And Derek Brown, who was a student of mine, who's here now. So I thank you. But I always leave when I talk to a group of young people like this with one phrase: get a job. Because that's the way you learn this business. And so many young people that are going to college, wherever they're going, when they get that degree, they expect to get out and go down to William Morris or CA or someplace and get a big office with a desk and chair and a secretary and a limo to drive you around that. It ain't that way. You still have to get in the business and learn the particular area that you become interested in. Now maybe you have a job that's waiting for you and you're out there. But don't be afraid to get out and get any kind of job. Just get in the business. Part of the Halsey Institute, and I would like to recommend all of you to go to halseyinstitute.com and see what we're offering. But I interviewed 60 of the very top professionals in this business. And each one of them, almost to a person, said they got in it that way. When they got out of college, that they got a job mowing the grass for Bill Gaither at Gaither Music until he had a job open up, and then it was in the shipping department. But the end of that, now they're head of the company. They're running the company. So these are all heads of companies that I'm talking to that are there that all started by getting a job, and they didn't wait for the job that was vice president. They got in, and you get behind the door, get behind that receptionist, you're in the business. It doesn't matter whether you're shuffling papers or taking trash out. Pretty soon you could be up on the top floor and be the boss. So that's my little talk today. I want to thank all of you for being here, and we'll open it up for questions and maybe some answers too. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Sure.
Anybody? Musician starting
I was. I actually I played saxophone in a band, and I was in college, and I went one summer. I took off, and I went to hear a lot at that time. A lot of big bands that I was fan of: Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Lionel Hampton, Duke Ellington. I realized when my little summer excursion was over, I would never, if I lived to be 1,000 years, play as good as any of those guys in those bands. But I wanted to be in the business. And so I started by being a promoter. I rented the hall, I hired a band, I put the posters out, I sold the tickets, and at the end of the night, I had some money left over. That was my profit. I said, I like this business. So I promoted everything from bands to jazz groups, to blues groups, to circuses, wrestling matches, ice shows. You learn it all. And by being in the musical end of it, as a promoter, you learn who the various team members are. Because the first band and 2 or 3 bands, I found out if I called a record company, I could get some free records to hand out to the radio stations, or maybe a few dollars to spend on radio. So it's all about a team and finding out who the team members are and learning that.
Can I add, that was also in a small town of Independence, Kansas.
Yeah.
You can do it from wherever you are.
Yeah, it was 10,000 population. So, but I had all those shows there. I had promoted practically every show that toured. And it's about selling and marketing, sales and marketing. That's what our life is about. If you got a product, you need to learn how to sell it. And who do you sell it to? Somebody that needs it. And how do you do that? Explain to them why they need it. This is good for you, make you feel better, you'll make money with it, you'll have fun with it. So, yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the sort of the internet revolution? Do you think it's any easier or any harder, or just different to kind of get your name out there?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's different because you can reach so many people instantaneously that would take you tons of money to do. I know when we were at the height of our big company, I had 42 stars that we represented, not artists, 42 stars that we represented. And we did anywhere from 250 to 500,000 pieces of mail a month. That was astronomically costly. We can reach that many today with the click of a button here. But every time Roy Clark or the Oak Ridge Boys or Tammy Wynette or Mr. James Brown was on the Tonight Show, we'd send out, we not only send out a lot of mail, we'd send out faxes at that time and say, watch tonight. Early on, I had a lot of criticism from my associates and my friends in the same business. They said, I can't believe you would send Roy Clark all the way to California to play on the Tonight Show, and he only gets $365. Well, I didn't even bother to explain to him that we notified everybody that Roy Clark was going to be on there, and the next day we sold thousands of dollars worth of dates on Roy Clark at the price bigger than what he was getting the day before. So you do certain things to advance your artist and your art, and sometimes you do things for nothing. But the internet is important to us because we can reach a lot. Our new school, the Halsey Institute, is online. You can take it and find out about the first 3 courses. This is Nathan Gray, who's doing our institute. He does a little bit of he came down and operated this today, but Nathan runs the school. Nathan, you want to say anything about the school?
Yeah, well, yeah, like you said, visit the site, because there you can read his history and find out about what people that are the experts, all these different experts he was talking about, that he interviewed. And essentially he and Son Sherman and some other production people spent a period of almost 5 years going and interviewing all these top guys that they know from their experience working in the industry. And so it's been an hour with these managers of Kiss, the agent at Taylor Swift that's been with her since she was 14, all these different people who never give anyone the time of day normally. They spent an hour interviewing each of these people. And so these guys will spill their guts. And it's 27 lessons that are up there now that range anywhere from 6 to 12 minutes long. So it's pretty easy for you to watch on the tablet yourself. So if you go there, at least sign up for our newsletter. And a side thing I'd like to mention is the summer coming up, we're looking for new interns. Mitchell's been a great help for us. And so if you want to know a little bit about what it's like, life's like in Tulsa and the Halsey headquarters, talk to Mitchell. But please write down my email address is nathan@jimhalsey.com. And if you're interested in interning in Tulsa or Halsey Company, just send me a simple email introducing yourself and talking about what you're doing. That's my pitch.
And while you're doing that with the devices and stuff, after we're done with our questions, be sure let's do a little marketing. What's marketing? What's the definition of marketing? Communicating the value of a product or a service, and I want you guys to share the Halsey group, or is it Halsey Institute?
Well, both. I mean, it's Halsey Institute. Just the Halsey Institute. The website is halseyinstitute.com.
Right.
On Facebook, look us up as the Halsey
Get that up on
Institute.
your stuff, everybody, and do a little marketing. Pretend you're an intern already and do a
He
little
has an
marketing.
Instagram, and it has a record to everything.
There you go. I have a question or two. If
Yes,
you don't mind. Some of these folks in here are starting and trying to establish their relationships with artists, and some of them have found artists they love, began the relationship, and of course, as I'm sure you've experienced, there's very little or no money in the beginning relationship between the two. And so some of the artists, people in here have found that they find themselves working a lot harder for the artist than the artist is working in that beginning stage. And some of them have had to abandon the relationship because it just didn't seem to be working. They were kind of treated more like hired help than equals. What are your thoughts on that in the beginning of the relationship? I don't know if I can explain that.
Well, that's a common problem because, first of all, you as a prospective artist management has to realize you're just as talented, at least at that point, as the artist is, and maybe more so, because you have a belief in that person that maybe you can take them beyond playing in a club at night or someplace else. Maybe it's all about being seen and heard, and you as the artist manager are the person that's going to do that. And you have to have a certain amount of respect or there is no relationship. And I've respected every artist that I've ever worked with. And I've had that respect back. So that's important. I've never worked with anybody that didn't believe in what I was doing, even though none of us maybe made money at the beginning of our career. Roy Clark, when I started with Roy Clark, we were all traveling in a car together, pulling a trailer, and playing NCO clubs and bars and anything else that we could get. Roy would do 5 shows a night some places just to get him heard. But pretty soon I would have people that would come in and see Roy Clark and say, wow, he's the most fantastic guitar player I ever saw in my life. And he was. So your artist has to reciprocate with that respect too, or I wouldn't waste my time with somebody. And a lot of artists or beginning artists are lazy, and they won't ever become anything unless they have that drive themselves, unless they see themselves a year from now or 2 years from now being beyond what they're doing now. You're wasting your time with somebody that, number one, doesn't believe in you, but most importantly, they don't believe in themselves.
Thank you. That's good. Confirms what we're doing. As an aside, I saw Roy Clark at the old Odd Couple where he plays Alan Wake.
Right,
The others
yeah.
on the other night is fantastic.
Chicken in the bucket.
You kind of touching around it, could you talk a little bit about prestige B&B, do shows for free if it's free?
Well, the main thing, we do shows for free if it's going to be someplace where there's an important audience of some kind. For instance, from time to time, we will play the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Well, you go there for free because you've got every newspaper in America and radio commentator that's there that's going to see you. And maybe if you're as good as you think you are, they're going to go back and mention you in your newspaper there. That's why most of the television shows don't pay any money at all. They scale, all the big shows. Or maybe if you're doing a Dean Martin or something like that, they would pay an adequate fee, but nothing like you were making out on personal appearances. It's all about being seen and heard by someone that can do something for you. And that someone may be sitting in the audience watching that television at home that's producing a movie or doing another television show or has a product that they want to sell and say, that person would be a good spokesperson for my product. So if you can be seen and heard by somebody's got it. And a lot of that comes when you're doing TV, because there's not much TV that you make any money with except Hee Haw, which became a phenomenal type of show. But even then, the artists didn't make the money from that television show. They made it from the exposure on that show, to where all of a sudden the price goes up. The other thing is awards. It's important to get awards. And if you can receive certain awards, the Oak Ridge Boys have been very blessed and received a lot of awards over the years, from Grammys to Country Music Association, Academy of Country Music, the Dove Awards, American Legion Patriot Award, the one after another. Last year, a couple of years ago, they got the American Eagle Award from the National Music Council. All of those things build to the prestige of the artists that make them where people that maybe are not as familiar with them say, well, they must be somebody, or they would. Of course, the Oak Ridge Boys got elected into the Country Music Hall of Fame last year, which was the greatest honor in this business. Yes?
You kind of touched on it a second ago, but Roy Clark and Hee Haw, how did all that kind of transpire getting into other people like Buck Owens, and what was the timeline into his career that really cemented him into that?
Well, Roy was already on his way to being a big television star. He'd done a number of Beverly Hillbillies. He was probably on The Tonight Show more than any other person. He even hosted The Tonight Show a number of times. So there was a couple of young guys from Canada, Pepiot and Aylesworth, that were doing a summer television special. And that was going to be a country music special, an hour show called Hee Haw. And it was going to run this summer of '69. So we went to Nashville, and at first I couldn't believe it because it's all these hay bales and overalls, and I said, Roy, this is exactly what we've been against. Our whole thing is coming down here with a bale of hay and a straw sticking out your mouth. And Pepiot and Aylesworth explained to me, said, you've got to see it in the cutting room because it's not really a music show. This is a comedy show, much like Lafayette. So we did it. But then, as we were getting into it, at that time, CBS had another show, the Brothers. Smothers Brothers. And they had made some political errors with CBS, and CBS fired them. So they had 9 shows booked on summer replacement. And they came in and talked to us and say, well, I know that you're only here for a week, but we've got to do 8 more shows. You're here for only 1 show. And both Roy and I said, well, I don't know whether we can do that or whether we really want to do this. Let's see what the show looks like before we commit to doing 8 more shows at summer replacement. Well, we looked at it, and it was funny, and I've got to admit that it was totally different than what I thought it was going to be. So we had to cancel some dates, and within a matter of 3 weeks, we did the impossible thing with Roy and all the other cast members. We did a total of 9 shows that we're going to start running in about 4 weeks after we cut them. So all of that was in the editing and the cutting room, for where they put the masterful skills and talents together to cut all that comedy and all that music together. And we still didn't believe it was just going to be a summer replacement, but by the end of the summer, it become a phenomenon. I mean, it's the hottest thing in the country. So they took us for 2 more years. Then CBS didn't like the image of being a rural television show because their number 1 show was Hee Haw. They had the Beverly Hillbillies and the Farm Show. Can't think of it. Green Acres. Thank you. So they canceled all of them. They canceled the 3 number 1 shows they had on the television. Well, the producers of Hee Haw said, we've got a winner here, let's go to syndication. So they went to syndication and actually sold it in more markets than CBS had. So we were, I think, in 227 television stations weekly, and that lasted for 25 years. It's still playing today. It's still on Sunday nights on RFD and has a big audience. How many of you here are musicians? Or singers? How many of you are songwriters? There's where the money is. So any of you that get out in this, maybe some of you are already in it, but you go to Nashville or LA or New York, the first thing they're going to ask you, do you write? That's more important than your talent as a player or a singer. Do you write? And you know, writing is really important. And writing is a craft, too. You can learn to write. And then every now and then you'll get inspired, you write something really great. There are a lot of good songs out there. Nobody cares about good songs. Gotta have great songs. Yes, sir.
What are some things that you would do? You talked a little bit about, you had smaller artists, you're trying to get them with some bigger artists. What are some other things you would do with an artist that's, really unknown?
Work it. Work that audience. Work the artist, wherever. Try to get into someplace where there's a music industry, like maybe Austin or Houston or New Orleans, or particularly Nashville, or where there are people from the industry that come out and see you. Or if you can't get out of town, you start and maybe you build you don't have to leave Oklahoma City. You start building an audience in Oklahoma City, you're going to get an agency interested in you. You have a club that you're playing out in the first month you have maybe 20 people, and the second month you have 40, and the third month you have 100. That'll come to attention to somebody. They'll come see you. You'll let them know. That's why you're taking this music business class. You'll know who to call and say, we have an artist that's tripled their audience here in a small club in a matter of 3 months. They'll be out here to see you because that's what they're looking for. Now, if you keep doing 20 the first and then you do 18 the next week and 10 after that, then there's something you better be examining your act. But I would go and see as many shows as you can see and learn what not copy them, but find out how you can get inspired that I can do something like that even better and do that. It's all about being seen. Put your artist or band on the road, whether they make money or not, if they can just make their hotel bill. Sell enough CDs that you can get out and get the experience of being on the road, because you never know who's going to be in that audience. And it might be one person, and that's all you need to be discovered. is one person that likes what you're doing. Then you can also invite them too. You go to Nashville and you play down, and maybe you're not making any money, but you get your list. You find out. I think there's a thing called "What's Happening in Nashville," but it lists all the record companies and the A&R people in that, and send them an invitation. And they probably get hundreds of them every day. But if you just get one person out of that, that's all you need. Try to network within that community. Go to different organizations. Go to and volunteer to do some work. You know, take tickets someplace or work backstage. Or it's all about being seen and heard and network. People that you know and who know you. And then it's selling and marketing. So if you've got the first part of it done, then if you have somebody to sell to, you know what to do. Yes, sir.
This whole time, you really haven't mentioned the word record, selling records. It's changed a lot nowadays.
Well, yeah, but the people still sell records, and you can sell them online, but you also sell them at your gigs. I mean, people still buying CDs and cassettes. I mean, it's surprising. People are still making cassettes up. So if you've got music, you can sell it, and that's going to help you get through what you're doing. And I know a lot of artists that go out and they will play a car dealer's showroom on a weekend or something to draw people, but they'll sell 15 to 20 to 100 CDs. And that's where, in the beginning, you're going to make more money from that than somebody paying you a fee to come in and do something. So there's always a way to be seen and heard. You've just got to be inventive and see how it works for you. All the things that go on in Bricktown here, for instance, and Oklahoma City is a good music town. Well, maybe you're not going to make the kind of money you'd like to make, but maybe you should invite somebody in to see you when you do that too. Maybe you should call an A&R person in Nashville and say, we'll pay your airplane fare if you come in here to see us. If you're good, if they hear about you, they'll pay their own way in. So will the big agencies. William Morris and Doc McGee travels the country looking at bands everywhere that he's heard about. Somebody said, there's a hot band in Oklahoma City. They're filling up that club down there every Monday night. He's going to be here. You may not know it, but he'll be in the audience, or one of his people will be. We talk about that. Doc McGee's one of our main people. He manages Motley Crue and Kiss, and he was very candid. He said some things that were interesting. All of them do, that you won't hear a lot of different places. That's why we have the most unique program there is in existence today. Nobody else has these pristine interviews from the very top people in the music business, the people that are the movers and the shakers that are doing it. And you can see them on our class. We're just beginning. We have 3 classes, and each one of those has different lessons on it. 27 lessons total.
Can I add a little something on
Yeah.
on the merch sales? I mean, everyone from small startup bands to even Oak Ridge Boys, they can double their revenue in what they call back of the room merch sales. So, of course, old school acts, they're going to have a older following. They might listen to new CDs than maybe younger bands or people who are streaming. But even as a younger band, thinking outside the box, not only do you have your CDs or your tapes, physical copies and stuff, but have a square card reader ready for people who can swipe the card real quick and either get it downloadable or a physical copy, and then creative stuff too. We see more and more quirky indie bands going beyond buttons and punk rock patches to doing weird stuff, right? And you can come up with outside of the box creative ideas. Handmade crochet koozies with things on it and interesting merchandise. So. But it's a way of doubling your revenue as a touring
Yeah.
performing band.
You think that's a backstage pass?
Just a for sale laminate.
That's for sale laminate that we sell. Then on the back of it, it's got the icon here that you can pick up our CD on. So, but sell this for $20, $25. Everybody loves it. You put it on your laminate. Oak Ridge Boys.
It's
So-
a souvenir, but it has multiple functions.
Yeah, so you can do it any way that you want to do, but this is, a lot of people would like to have something like this because they don't buy the CDs anymore. But this has got the music on it right here. And I'm thinking about, you're always trying to think about doing something out of the box. So a few years ago, while it wasn't totally out of the box, we did an LP with the Oak Ridge Boys. And so we only did 1,000 of them because we didn't know whether it would sell or not. Well, we sold 1,000 out immediately. And we didn't print anymore, but we may do the next. So now I'm getting ready to, I'm talking about doing an 8-track. Everybody said, an 8-track? He said, who's got an 8-track? I said, I don't know, I bet Jack White has. But you have one. Well, what the 8-track will be like this, it'll have the icon on it. So, there won't be anything in the 8-track except the box, but you can go and download your music.
No,
So
you
you-
have to have a player. You gotta have a player.
Well, we can do that too. What you want to do is to do something a little out of the box so people talk about it. So people talk about that 8-track because nobody's done that in 25 years.
And package stuff, right? You packaging more things that do little like
Right.
custom bundles and stuff that you can only get at the concert. So they'll do a record and a shirt, and now they got food. It's got food stuff. So they're pickled peppers and their jams and jellies and things with their label on it. They'll create a package deal that's a unique buying experience that these people who would come to the concert can only get here. Can't get it on the website.
So there's always something new that's going on. Maybe you think it's something new or different than somebody else is doing. And then you get some attention and you sell some product. But what you want to do is get somebody to come listen to your band or your music. Because having it on where you can't actually physically feel the vibe of the band, I think that's so important because there is a vibe and an energy that every band puts out on stage or in a club or even in a room like this that you don't get recorded. And it just makes a difference in selling. So whenever you're selling your band, try to get somebody there to see it in person. And with my band, with the Oak Ridge Boys, they're also personable, that they're good to meet and greet after it's over with too. And yeah, we still showcase them. I mean, we're looking at major corporate sponsors that will come backstage, and yes, we're trying to always make deals bigger and better and more meaningful. And that's the key, is to do something meaningful in our lives. And you can do it with music and art, more so than anything else that you. Are any of you interested in going into artist management? I like it because I feel, because I'm not a musician, professional musician, that's the next level of creativeness that comes along is that artist manager. Because you're the designer of the plan, you're the architecture, you're there at the keyboard making the plans you're making real music when you can transform that into a career for an artist. I love it. I think it's the most interesting business. And people say, well, when are you going to retire? And, well, first of all, what would I retire to? That I'm as stimulated as I am in doing what I do every day with what I'm doing. Retirement's good for a lot of people. I mean, if you're working, you're not really enjoying what you're doing, retirement's great. But I can't wait to get up in the morning to find out what kind of deals are going to be made that day. I'm here. Nathan and I came down today. We're excited about talking to you because we know in the school that we're doing, and we may do a bricks and mortar thing too. I'm doing a thing over at Bacone College in Muskogee. But the real thing is if we can impart some, not just knowledge and bricks and mortar type of stuff to you, if we can impart some enthusiasm about this business and the excitement of you being in it, this is what really stimulates me to do something is get some more people in this business that have some ideas that are going to take us to a different place that none of us have thought of before, and make that available for everybody that's out there. And in the IT world today, or the social media world today, that's going to be an interesting thing to see what happens. If I could have come down here as a hologram today. Well, I have a hologram out at the Oklahoma History Center with the Roy Clark. If you're out there, we did a hologram, and he welcomes you to the Oklahoma History Center. Well, I could not have done that in Tulsa today and been on stage here, and the same thing. Well, that's not. I mean, that's doable.
Did you lose that person?
Yes. So, events. If my whole life could be summed up in one thing, it's creating events. And sometime I'll talk to you about my doing events, because every year or so I create a major event. And it takes about 2 years to pull off really a major event. And sometimes it would take almost the whole time. I have had the most unique marketing event ever in the history of the music business. Nobody had done it before, and nobody has done it since. I'll tell you briefly what it was. We have a large ranch in Tulsa. It was 2,500 acres. And this is back in the 1970s and the 1980s. And I had all these artists that I represented, from Roy to Reba to Tammy Wynette to the Judds to the Oak Ridge Boys to Freddie Fender to Mel Tellis, everybody. Fleet Greenwood. We would have what we call the Halsey Ranch Party once a year. And we would invite in as our guests the buyers for all the major casinos in Nevada, all of the television buyers, Freddie DeCordova, the producer of The Tonight Show, the major fairs, entire fair committees, entire Frontier Days Rodeo Committee. We had 2,500 invited guests that came in for a weekend party at our ranch, which sits up on a big hill just south of Tulsa and overlooks miles. The big ranch house up there looked like something out of Bonanza. And we would put on this ranch party, and everybody outdoors would perform. The Oaks and Roy Clark and everybody would perform, and we'd be turning big steers on the spits out there and barbecue. We had Indian dancers, we had Indian art, we had all of our salespeople were there. We had the publisher of Billboard Magazine, the publisher of Hollywood Reporter, Variety Magazine. They were all there. Had New York Times, had LA Times. Every guest invited was important in their genre, what they were doing. And we had all of our salespeople there with all of these buyers. We had all the record company people there. Nobody's ever done this. We would sell in that one weekend millions of dollars worth of talent. Subliminally. We weren't there making it, beating people over the head, but that's where the Oak Ridge Boys deal with Dot Records was concluded at one of our ranch parties. Because I was trying to make a deal, this was before we had major records, with the president of Dot Records at the time. And he came to the ranch party, and the Oaks were performing, and he looked at me and he said, "Jim, I see what you're talking about. Let's make a deal. We'll do a deal." So it's under that relaxed atmosphere that the party, I had a limo come. Everybody became involved in it. I had a limo party, a limo owner from St. Louis that came in. He brought 17 limos, and we transported everybody back and forth from Tulsa to the ranch to do the big barbecue and the afternoon parties. We made 3 television shows out there over 3 years of time period. So, but that took a year to organize and to do, and to invite everybody and make sure that they got in and got out. But that was the most unique and most successful marketing event ever in country music. And nobody's ever done it before, and nobody's done it since. And they won't, because it's too expensive. But we had special ways of doing it.
Any other questions? Give him a big hand.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Nathan.
Absolutely.
I do have one question. How